The AJAX features of the MVC framework are surfaced through an AJAX helper. That is, you have an AJAX property on your view page that you can invoke to reach methods and extension methods that will give you some AJAX functionality. Specifically, you can use the AJAX helper to create hyperlinks and form tags that will initiate asynchronous requests. Here's an example in a view. We're going to call AJAX.actionLink. That's going to create an anchor tag that will initiate an async request. This is the text that we want to display inside of the anchor tag. The second method is the action that we want to invoke. And then there are various AJAX options that we can tinker with to specify what DOM element should be updated with the response, what HTTP method should be used to send this request, and how should the insertion of the response take place. Should we replace the content of this DOM element that we specified, or should we simply append to it? And we'll be looking at a couple of these other options as we move on. Let's come into our demo project and put ActionLink to work. Now previously we had written a whole pile of JavaScript to implement the same functionality that we were about to implement using a single action link. I'm going to leave that in the project so you can reference it, but I'm going to comment it out because we don't need any of this JavaScript code anymore. Instead, what we need in our index view is an action link. So I'm going to add an AJAX.actionLink. You can see there's 12 different overloads for this method. The simplest method just takes the link text, the action name, and the AJAX options. But you can find an overload that takes the text, the action name, controller name, protocol, host name, fragment, and so on. So there are a number of different overloads to accommodate a variety of scenarios. We're going to use the simplest overload. First, we'll need to specify what text to display in the action link, and that's still going to be click here to show the server time. We can get rid of this anchor tag because AJAX.actionLink is going to generate one for us. The second parameter is going to be the action name on the controller. When we pick an overload that specifies an action without a controller, a URL is going to be generated that comes back to the same controller that we're on. So we're going to come back to the same controller, the home controller, but we're going to invoke server time. And let's just check on home controller. We actually called it get server time. Let's change it to just server time. I think that makes more sense for an action name. Then the last parameter that we need is AJAX options. So I'm going to create a new AJAX options object, and I'm going to use the initializer syntax in C# to set up some properties on this object. So you can see there is an update target ID. That's the DOM element where I want the response injected. So I'm going to say update target ID equals the name of this time display div. And that's the only option I need to set for this simple scenario. There are additional things I could set. For instance, the HTTP method by default is going to be a post operation, but let's say that we want to force it to be a get operation. You can also set the insertion mode to do things like not replace the existing content in that DOM element, but append the response before or after that DOM element. And we'll look at some of the other options a bit later. It can help us hook into this process to take care of errors or to custom process the response. But I think that should be everything we need. If we run the application, we should see the same behavior that we saw before, which is I click here and it shows me the server time, 3:22:06 p.m. Now I'm going to go to localhost 36983 because I want this request to be intercepted by Fiddler, which is an HTTP tracing tool, and we can actually see what's going back and forth across the wire when we send off this asynchronous request. So I click here to show the server time again, and now let me pull Fiddler into view, and this last request on the bottom, that's the one that went out to server time. So it pulled up server time and it did a request from the server that just says 3:22:29 p.m. Other than the headers, that's the only information that came back from the server. So you can see that's a very lightweight way to bring information back from the server and update the display.